friends, my name is Whitney. I'm a second-year internal medicine resident in San Jose, California, and today I want to tell you about how COVID has changed my life on a day-to-day basis as a young doctor. So first, I'm going to walk you through what a normal day looked like when I was an intern before COVID was a thing, and then we'll talk about what a typical day looks like in the pandemic era. Let's get started. So before COVID, a typical day would start around 6 or 6:30, just depending on how long my patient list is. You meet up with your night co-residents who were watching your patients overnight and making sure that they're still alive in the morning. Their main job is just to keep patients alive for you. So you come in, you ask them, anything crazy happened with my patients? And for the most part, hopefully, they'll say no, or your patients were acting up last night. You need to tuck them in better. And then you apologize profusely and thank them for keeping your patients alive. Then between 7 to 9, that's when you sit down at your computer, you write down all the vitals and all the labs and all the studies that came in overnight. You read all the nursing notes and see what kind of crazy shenanigans your patients were up to. And then you go off and you examine your patients on your own. Afterwards, you come up with a plan of the day and what can I do to move my patient's care forward. Between 9 to 12, that's when you meet up with your whole team and you round on all the patients together. When it comes to your turn or when it comes to your patient, then you go ahead and present your case. You tell your attending, here are all the objective data. But this is what I saw when I examined my patient. And based off all of this information, this is what I want to do today for my patient. And they'll either say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, let's do it. Or they'll give you a judging look and say, that doesn't sound right, let's do this instead. And you cry on the inside, but smile on the outside like the dutiful intern that you are. Around noon, hopefully you're done rounding. By now you're definitely zoning out and not listening to any of the teaching that's going on and ready to go grab some lunch. Our chief residents present a noon report where they go over a really interesting case that one of the residents saw, and we go through the case together. And just by going through the case with other people, it kind of expands your differentials. I know I learn a lot about what I should be thinking about next time I see a syncope, for example, or what tests to run when someone presents with a fever and rash. So between 1 to 5, this is when you do most of your work for the day. This is when you place your orders. This is when you call the consulting services for help on some patients that may be a little complicated. If your patient needs procedures like thoracenteses or paracenteses or lumbar punctures, for example, this is the time to do it, as well as placing all the orders and tidy your patients up for discharge. And if everything goes well, 5 p.m. is when you can sign out to the night float, who will be watching your patients overnight, making sure they're ready for you the next day. So next, let's talk about what a typical day looks like in COVID era. So nowadays, you have to give yourself an extra 5 to 10 minutes in the morning to make sure you have enough time to go get temperature screened and get your sticker to put on your badge that says that you don't have a fever and you don't have any symptoms that make you unsafe for work. Between 7 and 9, in that pre-charting, pre-rounding period, COVID has added an extra layer of PPE. So now we all wear an N95 respirator, and on top of that we wear a surgical mask to help reduce how much your N95 gets soiled, and in that sense prolong the life of your respirator. On top of that we wear a face shield, and in addition we wear this yellow gown to protect your clothing, and we wear gloves. Not only does PPE add time to your pre-rounding, the time it takes to gown up and put on all the layers, come out, take everything off, clean down your face shield between every patient. It's harder to communicate with patients and other staff members because you have 3 extra layers on your face, the other person has 3 extra layers on their face, and by the end of rounds, by the end of the day, my voice is hoarse. Our poor patients can't hear us either. So if you're trying to talk to your 95-year-old demented lady, this poor thing sees a minion in a face shield. They're already confused as it is, and they probably think you're going to murder them. It's not good for their mental health nor yours. Not only that, I barely recognize half the new intern class because I've never seen them without their masks on. I don't know what the bottom half of their face looks like. Whereas noon report used to be in person and you got to interact with your colleagues and kind of joke around even when you're learning. And before, when we would do things like Jeopardy trivia, there would be a lot of competition in the room. There were like lots of smack talk flying around. But nowadays, to minimize large gatherings, we have also transitioned to virtual teaching. Everyone's favorite Zoom fatigue. I'm not gonna lie to you, when we have virtual teaching, I turn off my screen, I'm answering pages from the nurses, I am not paying any attention. So this year, our medical education has definitely taken a hit. So now you've done all your tasks, you've tucked in your patients, it's time to go sign out to the night team. Last year when I was an intern before the pandemic, a lot of us would de-stress by going to happy hour and grabbing dinner or going on hikes together. But nowadays, because of the pandemic, as you all know, we're not allowed to hang out or gather. And that's really taken a toll on our mental health. I've definitely noticed that our interns and my colleagues have burned out a lot earlier this year. Typically, we know the February slump is a time of year when burnout is high and morale is low. But for us this year, it happened a lot earlier in the fall. Not only can you not really hang out and commiserate and de-stress with your other interns, you're worried about your patient's safety, you're worried about your family's safety, you're worried about your own safety. This year, even if we have vacation, we're not really allowed to travel to go visit our family or take that international trip that you've been waiting to go on. And it definitely hasn't made burnout any easier. On top of that, all the craziness in the world of news and politics, it was all a bit much. Despite all the tiny changes throughout my day, I still count myself really lucky in the sense that I know for a lot of folks, they lost their jobs, their livelihoods, their ability to care for their families, and for some, they even lost their loved ones. For me, I still had some semblance of normalcy. I could still go to work every day. I still saw my coworkers and had social interaction in that sense. I was still able to care for my patients and do a job that I love. I had the privilege of caring for folks in their most vulnerable state and being that person who connected our isolated patients with their loved ones and updating their families about how they were doing every day. So overall, despite all the overwhelming craziness of 2020 and the pandemic and COVID, I'm still grateful for the life that I have. Thanks for watching this video. I know this week's topic was a little heavier and depressing, but join me next week where I'll be sharing 10 tips on how to counteract burnout in residency. So next, let's talk about what a typical